listened to. Was this an expression of just the Gen Z? Maybe it was an expression of many more Kenyans who may not have had an opportunity to express themselves. Mr. Speaker, these young people came out as true patriots, tribeless, without any boundary, Mr. Speaker. They defeated the class division, and they came out, Mr. Speaker, to speak resoundingly. My only unfortunate moment, Mr. Speaker, was when the demonstration was infiltrated and turned violent, Mr. Speaker, and there was a standoff between the demonstrators and the law enforcement and security officers, Mr. Speaker. The conflict that ended up landing some of them into mortuaries, Mr. Speaker. And as Kenyans, Mr. Speaker, we need to have a retrospection of all the officers, the state officers, who are seated in public offices. If there was something that was happening that was off and had a tendency to have a corrupt tag, this means the storm now must stop on corrupt practices, Mr. Speaker. Let everybody look through how they are conducting their affairs, beginning with us, Mr. Speaker, because today we are talking about ourselves, more of ourselves. How are we conducting our affairs? For those who are Christians like myself, the good book will guide us into what is godly order. For those who are Muslims, Mr. Speaker, while we are guided by the Bible, the Muslims will be guided by the Quran. But for the nation, Mr. Speaker, we have the Constitution that guides how governance must be done and how structures should be laid out, Mr. Speaker. Where we have gone wrong, Mr. Speaker, does that Constitution offer us an avenue of ventilation? Mine is to call upon the Gen Z. Now that we have begun to listen to what they have to say, mine is to call upon the Gen Z to allow us to walk the order of the Constitution, to accept that an olive branch now has been given by our President, Mr. Speaker, and that is the highest level of executive commitment, that the President is willing to have a forum with the young people, with the Gen Z, and discuss issues that need to be thrashed out, Mr. Speaker, must be taken as a sign of very, very goodwill, Mr. Speaker. And there are those issues that have been laid out. Is it possible for a nation to change within a day? Is it possible for a nation to change within a day? I see it has signaled an opportunity for us to begin the change. And while all the demands may not be met overnight within a week, within 2 weeks, Mr. Speaker, yet some of those things that are glaring, Mr. Speaker, like dealing with the corrupt cases, dealing with issues that are obvious and that have evidence, Mr. Speaker, that ball should begin rolling, Mr. Speaker. Why? Because if we cannot face the change, then change will change us, Mr. Speaker. It is my view, Mr. Speaker, that if we can honestly face ourselves, the society to face itself, EACC to also come out of slumber, take up those files, prosecute those that need to be prosecuted where there is sufficient evidence, Mr. Speaker, that corruption has happened within institutions, Mr. Speaker, then even the Gen Z will begin to see that we are serious and committed to upholding the dignity of every Kenyan, Mr. Speaker. Regarding the jobs, it is true, Mr. Speaker, the youth have faced a lot of unemployment, and I can only imagine how distressing, Mr. Speaker, this is when a young person has gone through schooling and has nothing to do, Mr. Speaker, and yet we are supposed to give solutions as leaders, Mr. Speaker. Those are issues that now need to be tackled in a different way. Is there bias in the way public office employs young people? Mr. Speaker, we need to straighten out the processes. We need to do things, Mr. Speaker, in a different way. And I want to specifically look at the suggestion that has been done by SRC for the raising the salary, Mr. Speaker, of the senators and members of parliament, Mr. Speaker. That proposal While it may have been good because everybody needs a raise at any point when they are working, a worker needs to be motivated, the timing is so wrong and it is not needed, Mr. Speaker. Least of all by the honorable members. I haven't met one single member still, Mr. Speaker, and I'm only repeating this because it has been said, but we are repeating it to affirm the fact, Mr. Speaker, that none of these officers seated here today, none of these legislators had asked for that increment. And we would call upon the SRC to be a little bit more serious with their tasks. They have a heavy, their ITRE is full with claims by intern doctors, Mr. Speaker, with claims from JSS, Mr. Speaker, the teachers in JSS, Mr. Speaker. Have those issues been handled yet? Are there opportunities where young people could be accommodated within the public sector where that available funding can then be disbursed towards supporting them, Mr. Speaker? We need to think outside the box and say, let's